Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Computer America Show. I hope that you're doing well and you are having a blast. This is going to be a little bit offset for what we normally do, but ladies and gentlemen, we definitely want to get a few things recorded. This will be kind of the first opportunity because earlier today we were supposed to record with another correspondent, Ralph Bond. He's back from vacation. He's doing well. I want to let everyone know that it's okay, but he does need to take a little bit of time off because I'm not laying blame on anything, but he had a nice vacation and came back with COVID. Yesterday he said that, he was fine. He could bounce right back and he can do the show and we could do the recording. And then about 12 hours later, he messaged me back and said that he felt like he had double laryngitis. So we're going to give him another week to relax and rest and recuperate. If you're looking forward to Ralph Bond, don't worry. Next week, we got you covered. But this week, luckily, we have the most healthiest in his prime member of our correspondence here to join us. We, of course, have the managing editor of Popzara.com, Mr. Nathan Evans. He'll be joining us here in just a moment to talk about a number of stories, just what's been happening in the day, and really process some of the news so that you don't have to go out and find it. Don't worry, he found a great smorgasbord of stories. And although he did miss this one about Tinder Select, which, obviously not in the dating scene anymore, but if you have $500 a month to burn and want to meet the most beautiful people that will not respond to you, well, Tinder Select has you has you. So with that being said, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, all that and more. Ladies and gentlemen, computeramerica.com, that's really all you need to remember. We'll have everything in the show notes, and of course, you can listen to us wherever podcasts are heard. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead, bring on Nathan, and just have fun. And of course, he is our longtime correspondent, friend of the show, and of course, he not only helps us with events and big shows, and of course, his monthly segment, but he manages a whole host of people over at Popzara, where they cover everything from pop culture, books, movies, games, tech reviews. Ladies and gentlemen, there's always new stuff up there. You can check it out. And of course, he has a number of podcasts as well that cover everything from gaming to, pop culture and movies and so on and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on. Nathan Evans, how you doing?
Yo, Ben, thank you for having me back on a Wednesday. By the way, you think I missed that Tinder thing?
Missed that what?
Mistake? You think I missed Tinder exclusive for that $500 thing?
Tinder Select. Yeah.
Tinder Select.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
It sounds like a feature you get at like Walmart.com. It's Tinder Select. You get the best choice of cuts.
You get the best. You get the most choicest pieces of eggplant. Yes, deliver it to your inbox. So
look, if you're paying $500 a month for dating, just get an escort. I mean, at that price, you're just going to be wasting money.
I don't know what 500 really gets you, but man,
there's Tinder $500.
Yeah, there has to be some executive out there that's just like, no matter how much we charge people for dating, there's always someone out there that is just desperate enough that we can go bigger. We can go higher paid. Yeah, and the article that I'm kind of just glossing through right now says that they have other high-end dating apps which I've never even heard of. Probably because, like most dating apps, unless it's one of the more popular ones, there aren't any people on it. Like there was that one conservative dating site, and not really going to talk about dating on your political spectrum. But Nathan, I will say, they were found after an email leak to have like a ratio of like 100 guys to one female. And most of the female accounts, because, when you browse it, it looks like a 50-50 split. Most of them were bots.
Fake.
And
but that's all of them.
Yeah, true.
I would imagine that every single dating site out there, if you're a guy, here's the message. Oh, $500. I'm going to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. No, you're going to be a pond full of other male fish. So that's the thing about it. It's like there's no secret. It's the ratio, and it's nature versus nurture. And I'm going to say something. It's going to offend somebody, but that's who I am. The fact of the matter is, if you're a man and you need to date and you think you need to pay $500 to get on an app, then you have some social problems. But if you have $500 a month to spend on a dating app, you have money.
Yes.
So money will overcome social problems, which in turn is what a lot of these women want anyway. Do they speak English? No. Are they real? Maybe not. Are they men in disguise? Possibly. But the fact of the matter is, you will find someone. If you're willing to spend $500 a month to be on a dating app, you'll find someone, because a fool and his money are soon parted.
Even on top of that, I was just reading this article saying that the $500 a month, by the way, it's almost like the Diablo 4 scandal that happened a little while ago, where people were buying like the super duper deluxe thing with the artwork and the statue and the so on and so forth, Nathan. And like after like $400 for all that stuff, you didn't even get a copy of the game. Like the game was sold separately from that. Same thing with this, $500 a month, and then on top of that, you can add plus gold or platinum, which I guess are some of their other tiered subscription services. So yeah, 500, and then maybe another 100, and then maybe you can get someone to talk to you. So good luck with that.
You know what though? Good for them. Like, if you get someone to pay $500 for your service, that's great. Like that's capitalism right there. That's pure capitalism. That is not like a medication. That's not like a medication that you need that costs an absorbent amount of money. Like that's different.
Yes. This is I'm almost like one of the biggest scams that I've seen in like the news and stuff like that is our romance scams, and especially the elderly are really taken for saying I love you, and it turns out to be someone in Pakistan who's siphoned off all their savings and they're left destitute. But it's like this is almost like a love scam, but from Tinder themselves. Like they're tired of outsourcing their scams. They want to do it in house.
Love scam? That's an oxymoron. Like
yes,
all love is a scam.
Oh, that's not nice. Love exists.
Look,
No.
Let me put it this way. If you find someone you love, like you have, you go for it, you sign the documents, whatever. If you are a really rich man, if you have a lot of money, or less so, if you're a really rich woman and you find a handsome hunk that loves you for who you are, prenup the hell out of that thing. Prenup. Love means never having to say you get half.
I mean, marriage in itself is a financial institution. That's the whole point of marriage. Yeah, so, but
that's exactly what it is.
We're not going to get into medieval practices, and instead, Nathan, with the people who are viewing the stream, of course, if you're just listening, thank you. But if you're watching, you can of course see Popzara in the background. Let's go ahead and give a little bit of taste of what your writers have been working on over at Popzara, and then we'll jump into the actual stories that we were going to talk about.
Sure. It's the doldrums of summer. So that means things are sort of, dying down for the upcoming fall, which, by the way, is fall this week. Was fall this week?
Yeah. The first, might have been the week before, but yeah, close enough.
But it's happening. It's when all the leaves start turning, depending where you are, and things get nicer and the weather gets nicer. So that means things are going to transition when it regards to the website. See, every topic we cover has its peak time. Normally movies, it's kind of the summer, it's kind of December, for blockbusters and Oscar bait. For games, it's typically November. For books, it's all over the place, but usually October. It's all over the place now. Everything is different now. Like the big stuff comes out whenever. Like we've had big movies come out in the summer. We've had big movies come out in the fall. We've had big books come out now. It's pretty crazy. It's so expect a lot of the expected, but expect the unexpected too. So basically a little of this, a little of that.
Yeah, no, that's very good to hear. And it's something that has been happening that we have not talked about on the show. But now that it's just ended, the writer's strike, of course, is what I'm kind of alluding to. The actor strike is still going on, obviously, but the writer's strike. And the writer's strike was particularly, going to be kind of troublesome because that more and more recently doesn't just affect movies. It affects, obviously, TV shows, but video games. A lot of them are guild members and writers. And, I'm not saying all video game development stopped, but yeah, Nathan, what have you thought about the strikes coming to an end? Not even so much that the strikes are strikes, whatever, but do you think this is going to have an impact for like the beginning of next year? We're going to see like
Sure.
you said the doldrums. Isn't another one coming because everything got delayed?
I think we're already seeing the effects of it. For example, I think you have a lot of films that were supposed to be released. Now, the writer's strike doesn't mean films in production only. It means films that were being promoted. So, for example, I think the Dune sequel is going to come out. Now I think it's been moved.
Yeah, like
you're going to see a lot of things
April
moved.
or May or something like that. Yeah.
I'm going to be a little controversial. I know, shocking. But here's the thing though. I actually think the strikes were fantastic for the companies. I don't think the Writers Guild did a very good job at managing it. I think they were on the losing end of it. And I'll tell you why. They had a great message. And we're going to hear this a lot, AI. They had a good message. They deserve to get paid more. You don't want AI replacing you. That's fine. But the way they approached it, they didn't approach it with the realities of the situation, is that there's 5,000 stations. For example, you kept hearing stories about Breaking Bad, about Aaron Paul or Jerry Seinfeld, how, Jerry Seinfeld doesn't get any money from Seinfeld on Netflix. Breaking Bad. Yeah, but that's irrelevant to the writer's strike. Like that has nothing to do with the writer's strike. That has to do with terrestrial media. See, for example, you wouldn't know who Aaron Paul is had it not been for Breaking Bad on Netflix. That show bombed when it was on terrestrial TV. It wasn't until it went on streaming, which of course gave Aaron Paul a career. This is a guy who was on like The Price is Right variety show. Then he was on one of the most acclaimed shows. This guy had no career until Netflix. He's like, I don't get residuals. Yeah, because you didn't have a contract for it. So, but a show made for Netflix, like the Addams Family show. What's that show called?
Wednesday,
or Stranger Things. These are shows developed by the streaming network, which is a different argument. They deserve a better contract. They deserve some sort of residual payment. I get it. The argument was false, so I wasn't very sympathetic to the writer's strike. I didn't like their inflammatory language. But what happened, though, it created this vortex where you had Hollywood have all these hotspots coming in because you weren't allowed to promote your film, which I'm sure was probably a violation of their contract. Like when you hire big stars like to make a film, promotion's probably baked in their contract.
Yeah.
So they were probably violating their contracts. So Hollywood will remember that. But I'll say this:
you have as much legalese going into acting and writing as much as any kind of art form or formal teaching or stuff like that. Like it is and everything you just outlined really highlights it. It's a legal minefield to kind of work in a large industry like that.
Well, for example, let me give you a good example. Barbieheimer, right? Barbie and Oppenheimer came out. We talked about this. I think the strikes made those movies what they were because you didn't have stars promoting the usual way that became again, Barbie would have become a controversial nightmare for Warner Brothers as it tried to later, but the audience found it first. They created a pop culture moment out of it, that with Oppenheimer, and because you had no interference from Hollywood, people were allowed to enjoy the movie. They were allowed to enjoy them both, and they both became huge successes. For example, Taylor Swift, a concert film, is going to be coming out this month for October. Ben, that movie is projected to make like $150 million in a weekend. That's insane.
I feel like I blinked and she went on this tour, that sold out everywhere, every time, and was just huge. I feel like I blinked, and like Taylor Swift went from being, another celebrity singer to being probably bigger than a religion at this point. Like,
she is.
It is crazy.
She's the biggest entertainer in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in the Kansas City area, so you can imagine what I'm going through right now. You can pray for me. It's all over the place. Taylor Swifties. But I'll say this. But that would not have come to theaters had it not been for the writer's strike.
Yeah.
So what Hollywood's doing, Hollywood is looking at this and they're thinking to themselves, we don't really need these people like we thought we did. And I don't think the actors and I don't think the guilds quite understood what they unleashed. They unleashed their uselessness. Like, there are no stars anymore, like the way you think about it. There's a show that just came on TV called Crabopolis by Dan Carmen, the guy who did Rick and Morty and Community.
Crabopolis.
This show was supposed to come out a couple years ago. This show was controversial. It was going to be funded by NFTs. And for some reason, unbeknownst to the gods of the Pantheon, it's been renewed for 3 seasons before it ever came out. Insane. This is by Dan Carmen. Guy, he's usually credited as the co-creator of
with some
Rick
of the stuff that's come out recently. There was that one show with The Weeknd that was, totally panned, and like they didn't even want to like finish it. It was so bad. Like,
exactly, it's done.
Yeah, I'm surprised anything gets renewed for more than 2 seasons. At this point.
That's what I'm saying. So you have animation, which is a lot cheaper to produce, right? But it's all residuals. It's 100% residuals. Like, The Simpsons set the template for what the writer's strike is doing right now. For those who have small minds or small memories, and small minds, you probably remember when The Simpsons threatened to boycott, the voice actors threatened to boycott years ago because they weren't getting paid what they thought were residual benefits. And they threatened to replace them with sound-alikes. So what happened, though, is that The Simpsons voice cast created this contract where they would receive residuals no matter where the show would go. They're set for life. It's just set for life. But which is ironic because The Simpsons now has replaced some of the voice actors because of politics. But anyway, what happens, though, you have the show Crabopolis who comes out. Show's been renewed for 3 seasons. It's gotten mediocre reviews. Apparently it went on TV, did good ratings. It's on Hulu, too. Mm-hmm. So go figure. So what's happening is you're seeing a sea change where you have like 1 million shows, but you only have like 500,000 eyeballs. You cannot guarantee that everyone's going to watch your show. Right. And the argument that the actors, by the way, this had nothing to do with actors, it had everything to do with writers, but the actors joined in, solidarity. They were like, oh, we shouldn't have to, like, I had to sell my house. Okay, then you're bad with money. Like, you're bad with money if you have to sell your house after being on strike for a month. So stop buying crack and cocaine. But what I'm saying is, what I'm really saying, though, is that you have all this stuff and they're like, we want to get paid. But the fact is, the market is so bifurcated. Like, you literally cannot have a show that gets 20 million people on every show. Like, let's be honest, you probably would make, some of these actors, Ben, are going to make more money on the old system than the new system, because now it's going to be content based. Like, in the tech world, Netflix, Disney Plus, they all agreed to this. They're going to have to start sharing their metrics more with the actors now, which was always a big contentious thing. And one of the reasons you didn't see it, is because nobody's watching this stuff. Like, there's been shows that have been out that have had like 5,000 viewers. Like, your YouTube station gets more than some of these shows.
I gotta say that after I turned on Netflix and I saw Is It Cake 2, I was like, I think some stuff is just filler. Yeah.
It is, but that show's fascinating.
Is it?
Sometimes I'm fooled. Like, I didn't know that was a cake. Like, when they have like a bucket of chicken. But what I'm saying, though, is that I have sympathy for them, but you have to understand, we live in a very different world. There's not just 3 stations. 30, 40 million people are not going to be watching Big Bang Theory. Like Frasier's being rebooted, right? I forget, from Paramount or Peacock. Because they've run out, because it's all IP. It's easy because what happens is, well, that's exactly what the writer's strike is about. So you have Netflix, right? You have Netflix, and they take Seinfeld, a show they had nothing to do with. They buy it for $1 billion. They put it on. Same with Community. Same with The Office. The Office was not a big hit on TV. It was not a big hit until it became streaming. It took years for that show to become a big hit. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about rebooting it. So here's the thing. Here's a little trick for you guys. Disney Plus is going to be rebooting Daredevil. The Netflix show that Netflix paid all that money for, but they're not calling it Daredevil. They're calling it like Daredevil Reborn. The reason they're calling it Daredevil Reborn is that it resets the contracts for residuals. So none of the original creators from Daredevil are going to get any money or get going to get pennies on the dollar.
But it's going to be like a direct successor to that, right?
But it's got a different name. So it's a different show. Yeah, so that's how it works. Like, they know what they're doing. Yeah. So what's happening, though, is that it's, like I said, it's a minefield. The Hollywood studios screwed up. The actors, the writers screwed up. They all decided we screwed up enough, So let's not screw up anymore, and let's get back to work.
So and also, yeah.
No, I was going to say, get ready for a lot of Korean and Japanese TV in the next 6 months,
Yes,
because that's what was being produced.
I do recall that Netflix said they were going to fill out their fall and winter catalog with Korean shows, which, by the way, I've seen a number of them,
and they're pretty good.
They're wacky. They are. They get out there. Like for someone who's enjoyed a lot of obviously Western media, and it follows a formula. You know, you kind of expect things, and when little things deviate, that's when you kind of remember them. Korean television has no such compunction. They will just fucking just go hard left with it. Yeah. So
it's what happens.
Yep.
It's what happens when you have an industry that is unbound by political correctness, and also where they champion new ideas. It's what happens when you don't have to continuously go back to the IP well.
Yeah.
You're going to have to think they're not all going to be great. There's going to be some stinkers.
I think that the stakes are just lower as well. But anyways, I also brought up the writer's strike and the actors' strike to also get into the fact that one of the tenets of the things that they were negotiating was AI and everything that has to do. Whether or not AI's time is ready for writing and acting, I don't think so. But AI has certainly entered the conversation, even in places that, obviously places that, Nathan, if you recall 5 years ago, when it came to automation and stuff like that, everyone said that technology was going to replace the humble delivery person. It was going to replace the factory workers. It was going to replace the distribution centers, for Amazon and stuff. They were working to automate, purely physical, menial tasks, and it was going to put a lot of people out of the job. You can look at fast food workers, things like that. Now we're seeing, Nathan, though, that technology, to ever prove that it is unpredictable, it seems like the creative jobs are the ones who are now at risk. The jobs that we said that a robot will never be able to create art. It won't be able to create music that people like. The creatives are the last remaining jobs after technology reaches its apex. That turned very quickly with AI, and not to turn this whole stream into a big old AI is great kind of show, but I do want to say AI is coming for you. And how do you think it's going to work its way into maybe your life, or how do you think AI is just going to be introduced to people on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I disagree with some of the premise.
Oh, please.
I do agree that AI is coming for us, of course. AI, we love you. Please don't annihilate my family. Please don't, siphon my bank account. But no, here's the thing. I disagree with your premise that the creatives, because I don't really think these people are that creative. I think what happens is that they themselves have got themselves boxed in this corner. Before AI, it was called the algorithm. And before that, we called it the SEO. It's the idea that we have micromanaged creativity. We have marketed. We have razor sharped it to such a fine point that literally, if AI stepped in right now, you would not tell the difference. Because again, everything is market driven. Like we've had shows mocking this. We've had satires about how, we call it political correctness, but whatever. It's really a marketing thing.
So
everything is all.
So just make sure that I have this clear. That you think that a lot of a lot of content, either be podcasts or TV shows or movies or whatever, they were set to a formula, and now that we have something to replicate that formula, we've talked almost like we've almost made stuff like computers, and now that computers can do it, we're kind of closer to them, and it's easier to be indistinguishable.
Well, it's kind of like a merging of the Buffett rule versus Moore's law. Like Warren Buffett once very famously quipped, first come the innovators, then come the imitators, then come the idiots. Moore's law is about doubling, the capacity of memory. Well, as the need for content has increased, the amount of content needed to be produced needed to be doubled. Back in the 70s, you had one man who ruled television, Norman Lear. Norman Lear created All in the Family. He created The Jeffersons. He worked on Good Times. What people don't know is that Norman Lear was a famous plagiarist. He plagiarized himself. what he would do is he would take scripts from shows and he would basically just reuse them, reuse complete premises, reuse storylines, reuse characters, reuse everything, just dress them up differently, like an avatar on
a formula game. Yeah,
a formula. And it worked really well because he was the only one doing it. He was really good at it. Like, just because someone is copying doesn't mean the copy's not good, right? If the copy's good, then it's good. The problem is that when you have successive generations of so-called creatives, they didn't go to school by, Norman Lear lived in Harlem. Like, he lived on those streets. He understood some of this stuff. So by the time his third, fourth generation Norman Lear imitator came out, they grew up on television shows. So what happens is there's been a dilution of the brand. You go into anything right now, everything is so market driven. Like Netflix, people make fun of Netflix because they literally joke that their shows are made by an algorithm. Because whatever the hot topics are, they just put that in the show. Like, oh, people love dog videos. Give the character a dog.
Yeah.
Let me give you a great example of this. Actually, we talked about The Office a few minutes ago. You can see the moment where Gary Daniels left The Office and he was replaced by a nonsense person. Because I remember there was this one episode you watched The Office. The Office was a satire. It was biting. It was based on character. But at some moment, the show flipped and it became memes, where whatever was on the internet that week was on that episode. There was an episode where it begins where people are just laying in the office. Oh, what are they doing? Oh, they're planking.
Yeah. And they had the whole parkour episode and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever was on the internet, because that's what guided the show. That's a very opaque version of it, where you can see the strings.
You know who else did that?
Everything.
A lot of shows do that. Futurama did that with not the most recent iteration, but the one that they made for, I think it was Comedy Central. The writers for that used a lot of the iPhone and stuff like that. It was very topical.
That's true, but that's okay. Topical is one thing. Like, people criticize The Simpsons because of this. They criticize Shrek. Oh, you're using pop culture jokes. Yeah, Bugs Bunny used pop culture jokes. You can use it as a starting point if the joke is funny. Like, the episode you're talking about with Futurama is actually one of the most beloved episodes of Futurama.
Is it?
It's where Fry goes, "Shut up and take my money."
Yes. Yes.
He's because people because they're mocking that. By the way, the new Futurama on Hulu, not bad.
It actually reminded me more of the original 5 seasons than any other reboot has. So I'm a fan.
It hasn't reached the peak yet, but hopefully it'll actually be able to survive a season or two and find its legs. But I'll say this. But yeah. So what we're doing now, though, we're not talking about creatives being creative and drawing inspiration. We're talking about people who are literally just copying and pasting from other things, copying shows. There was that one show. Who's the fat comedian who's always working with Adam Sandler? King of Queens.
Oh, yeah. Kevin James?
Kevin James. He made this show a couple of years ago, and it was basically a version of King of Queens with a different woman. The show tested so poorly, they fired the woman who played his wife and replaced her with the actress from King of Queens, Remy, whatever.
Yeah.
I forget her name. Because she tested better because she was on a different show. They just gave up and said, just give the people what they want. This is the state of things. This is the state of everything. What's going to happen? You saw Warner Brothers purge all this content last year, where they started canceling movies that were already in the can. They should have canceled The Flash, but they canceled Batwoman. They canceled shows and they memory hold them. What was that show on Disney Plus? The Willow's TV series that was based on the show. Came out, horrible show. Nobody watched it. Disney didn't just cancel it. They memory hold it. It's gone. You can't watch it anymore. You can't buy it.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So what happens if you were Warwick Davis, or you were one of these actresses and you put 6 months of your life in this show, right? You were promised residuals. You were promised all this stuff. Now, in the old days, Ben, a show that was canceled could stay around in syndication for a while. It could kick around. And sometimes it would kick itself back to life. I'll give you a great example. The Jetsons. Jetsons came out in the 60s. It was terrible. Nobody watched it. It bombed. It went on syndication for 30 years or 20 years. And it took 2 decades, but eventually it got an audience and it came back to life, and they started producing new episodes.
All it took was brainwashing a few kids. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's someone has to see your thing to like it, right? Someone has to see it. But going back to the point of AI, though, if AI came in, AI could probably do a better job of copying and pasting than these humans do. You don't need a Harvard you don't need a Harvard degree or an MIT MBA to be able to plagiarize an old show or to say, well, market research. No, you mean Twitter, because we don't give time to creatives. Like this guy, Dan Carmen, I mentioned him. I'm sorry if I get off track. He's the guy that they say co-created Rick and Morty. I think he's the guy that takes credit for co-creating Rick and Morty. Like, because this guy doesn't seem to be able to have success outside of his relationship with the man who was let go. Like, I don't know if you ever watched Rick and Morty. I forget the guy's name. He was fired from the show.
Yeah.
And now they have sound-alikes. They have. Did you see the new trailer? They have sound-alikes that sound like Rick and Morty.
Yeah, Dan Harmon and the other guy that got into a whole controversy with that whole court case and so on and so forth. Which was dropped. Which was dropped, and but hey, things changed on that show and all that stuff. Nathan, my whole point with bringing up AI was to transition into the story about the new Microsoft update. I promise I had a point with it.
Okay, I'll say this, but let me finish my thought though. So what I'm saying is, you fire the creator of this show that did your voices,
Justin Roiland.
Justin Roiland. By the way, Dan Harmon himself also accused of sexual impropriety, not fired.
True.
So go figure. So anyway, they replace him with sound-alikes. Like, what's the difference between replacing someone who created the character with sound-alikes with AI? It's going to happen. It's already happened. Disney's been doing it on their Star Wars shows. When you saw Luke Skywalker in the last couple of things of The Mandalorian, that wasn't Mark Hamill. That was AI. When you hear Darth Vader talk on these Star Wars shows, that is not James Earl Jones. That is an AI voice doing that. That's not a real person, because they bought his voice. They bought his likeness. So this is not dystopian, Ben. They're doing it right now. They're just going to take it to the next level, like some tech blogs have done, and they're going to start introducing AI writing. In fact, they already did on the Marvel show. What's that? The Secret Invasion. They did AI to do the credits. And it's probably a lot more. Like, I'll be honest with you. Milli Vanilli did not sing those songs. They got caught. I'll tell you right now, there's a lot more AI going on right now that anyone knows. I guarantee it.
Yeah. After seeing that story that someone was writing like 80 articles a day and was not attributing it to AI whatsoever. And honestly, I think it's been happening for years with the financial industry.
Can I say?
Yeah.
I was going to say one more thing. I don't want to get into too much, but this is nothing new. There have been multiple journalists who have won Pulitzer Prizes for writing fake articles, from their bedrooms. This doesn't happen. Like, if you're an AI writer, and by the way, you can't just put write me script into ChatGPT. You got to have some level of skill to be able to tweak it. So if you're that good and you fool people, then that scene from The Matrix when the guy's eating the steak? Yeah. He's like, oh, I know when I put it in my mouth, it's fake, but I don't care. Like, that's what people are like, whatever. If it's popular, it's popular.
They're good at using the tools that they are presented with, even if the tools make it super easy. It's not, it's the whole thing. But I will say these people should do what I do and just write 1 to 2 articles a year and really pour yourself into half of the article. But no, okay, so Windows 11 update.
And make no money.
Yeah, exactly. So Windows 11, and you link this article. This is from Mashable. There we go. And this is about the new update that I think should be available today, like you said.
I have it. Yeah, they put it on my computer.
Yeah, I need to get it because, first of all, like AI, when it comes to like generating photos and stuff, is actually a lot of fun. I actually do enjoy, kind of creating just simple landscapes and stuff like that. So did you want to go point by point, or did you just kind of want to talk about the new update in general?
I think in general, because I haven't had a chance to play with a lot of it. Like I said, it was on my computer this morning when I woke up. I didn't ask for it. So I guess AI is here because it decided for me.
Right.
And before you listeners, before you say, oh, you should turn the button off. Yeah, you go ahead and you try turning off all those toggles in Windows. There's like 50 of them, and they're scattered all over the place. It's like something out of Douglas Adams.
I just installed a new operating system not too long ago, and I got to say, Nathan, that reading the toggles, it was like there were like triple negatives in there. There were a bunch of off, on, off.
Let me give you an example.
It took 10 minutes.
Give you an example. So the original, when you start off Windows 11, there's a bunch of toggles like do this, toggle this. And then once you get out of that, there are more toggles that are hidden under submenus. Like, for example, there's history, which is not a part of the toggle. You got to go into history, you got to go into timeline, you got to untoggle that, you got to toggle jump list, you got to toggle this, you got to toggle that. It's literally by design to be complicated. That is not an accident. They know what they're doing. They don't want you to toggle it. And so, but speaking of that toggle, you're talking about Windows 11 22H2 update.
Yep.
So just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and just reading through some of this, Paint Co-Creator is going to, well, it's a preview right now. So it's beta, essentially. You can use Paint, and then, of course, you can use Co-Creator to generate an AI image for what you put in. Let's see, use snipping tool to quick recipes on food, which, yeah.
I was going to say, not to interrupt you, but you made a point before, and I think you were more right than you know.
Thank you. I often am.
Well, for example, Microsoft has basically used AI to basically resurrect Paint and resurrect photos. Like these were apps that were decrepit years ago. They were ready to go. I think Microsoft was talking about replacing Paint. Paint's back, baby. Paint's back.
They actually did. They introduced Paint Plus, I think with Windows 8 or something like that, 8.1. Paint has always been like just a very simple tool that I don't think anyone ever, and I'm not saying anyone because I've seen some stuff that people have done, but Paint was always like, I need to crop a screenshot that I took, and you open up Paint and you crop it, and then you close Paint, never to use it again. But to use it as an actual like art app, I don't think that happens all that often.
Well, it was interesting because Paint would actually do something Photoshop wouldn't. Like for a lot of people use Photoshop without all the plugin packs. Paint would actually open up like WebP file formats. It would open up HEIC, I think it was. It would open up a lot of strange formats natively that you could convert to use to other programs.
Right.
But you're right. Paint was basically there. It's by the way, I think we should say RIP to WordPad. I think WordPad's been sunsetted.
WordPad is now like Notepad Plus or something like that.
No, WordPad's gone. Like it's just gone. Like it's been made irrelevant. I think what happened is Notepad, by the way, got a update last year, a much needed update. But Notepad is still basically Notepad. It's not like you Mac people know what I'm going to say. It's not like TextEdit, which is a text editor with hypermarkup.
Right.
Notepad is brilliant. Notepad is basic text, no formatting, Unicode. It is nothing more than basic text. You know what I use it for? I use it to blanch. Copy and paste text. I'll copy and paste text from websites. And I don't know if you noticed, but when you copy and paste from a website, you're copying a lot of garbage. There's a lot of hyper markup and everything.
Yeah.
So you copy text, you put it in Notepad. It's like boiling a lobster. As soon as you put that stuff in Notepad, everything's dead. It's just text. You've killed it. And that's what I want. I want nice blanched text without all your crap and all your metadata. Gotcha. I love Notepad. Never go away.
Yep. So that was first one. Second one, snipping tool, which I guess it would take a photo from, and this is again using AI, take a photo from your computer and then try to match it with a recipe that is found online, all again using AI. So there's that. Passwords, which by the way, once again, transitioning from one device to another, my God, the passwords have gotten ridiculous. I'm tired of resetting passwords, and it's saying you can't reuse the same password you just used because I tried to enter that password and you didn't let me. So I had to reset, and you can't let me use the same password because it was the password and it lied to me. Oh my God, passwords are awful, Nathan. Yeah.
They got to do password stuff, but this is a little mixed messaging because at the same time, Microsoft themselves is moving away from passwords. Like they do the links, the verified things with
they do two-factor and they do Windows Hello where you put in your PIN. Yeah.
I don't trust them. I use third party myself, and that's not going to change with this. Like, it's interesting. I think we're going to briefly talk about Apple's update as well. And both Apple and Microsoft both decided to upgrade their password features. Both of them do it very poorly, I think. I remember a couple years ago, Microsoft was doing, you had to use a third-party app to verify with QR codes. Like, they don't know what they're doing. I'm sorry, Microsoft. I get it. You don't know what you're doing. I get it. There's no perfect solution. I know this. I know you know this. My personal preference is when you're going to laugh at me when I tell you what it is. I actually like LastPass. I know they got hacked, but no one cares about my password, so I'm pretty cool. So no one
LastPass.
wants
Yeah,
my
yeah,
stuff.
they've been around for a while. I think I'm using not them being paid by them or anything, but
Yet.
NordPass.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're all right. Pretty much, and it doesn't matter if it's OnePass, LastPass, NordPass, AnyPass. Any of them, I think, are better than the default. But hey, maybe Windows will be able to do something. So so they're working on password management in Windows 11. For photos to be easier to find, where again using AI, they'll be able to. You'll be able to search your computer and say pictures of dog or beach ball as they use here, and it'll be able to identify photos on your computer of that thing. So hey, maybe the search function will, after 30 years, become useful. Maybe.
I'll say this: a couple of years ago, when I was a Mac person, Macs got a really nice upgrade for this sort of indexing, where you could add tags to photos and everything. This is before AI. I'm of two minds of this whole thing. I get why people would like this idea, but at the same point, if you watch Microsoft's video for this, there's an annoying song about some woman screeching over it. But if you look at all the AI stuff, you realize what's happening to the computer is that we're letting the computer run more and more of our lives in ways that make me a little uncomfortable. It's one thing to say take a background out of the photo, or change this. But it's like, oh, summarize this and send an email and create this. So you can have your computer create a slideshow that you didn't make, that you're going to send to someone who will never watch it. Yeah. So you're going to have this whole second life that only exists online that you know nothing about, but yet it involves everything about you. If you're that disorganized, where you don't know what photos you have and you don't know where things are and you don't remember things, then it's basically like Second Life. Like the computer's going to handle everything for you. Like, oh, that photo's bad, we'll just fix it for you. Oh, we'll send it to your grandma. And grandma's not going to be able to open it because she doesn't know how to use Windows. She got iOS. And so it's going to be interesting. And I will say this, I tried some of the features that they showed. Like I tried using the new paint. It doesn't work. Like I have the big feature is called Copilot.
Yeah.
And I have Copilot right now on my thing.
Co-pilot or co-creator?
Copilot. Yeah. So Copilot is it's in your taskbar in Windows 11. So if you put it up, it adds a sidebar. And in the video, it's like, oh, play some relaxing music. And it's like, oh, we're going to open up Spotify. I tried it. It's like, I can't do that. You might want to look at this. Like nothing in that video works. Yeah. And it's more like a lot of AI stuff. It's like when Elon Musk talks about self-driving cars. He believes it, but it hasn't happened. Yeah, and that's what it feels like. Where AI,
and by the way, to finish up this little article here, and then we'll talk a little bit about the new Apple update, and you kind of compare them before the show. But I got to say that so the last update here was Windows Backup, and they're saying that if you're logged into two devices with your Microsoft account, you can easily transfer, which I think is actually a huge improvement of life. Is you can transfer your credentials. So if you swap out hard drives, before it was a whole thing where you had to deactivate one computer, reactivate the other, figure out how to transfer files without actually having the operating system to do it. To be able to do that on over the cloud is actually a fairly nice quality of life update. So that's nice.
Yeah, and I'll give Apple a little credit for that, because Apple was on the board with this stuff a while ago, and I've always felt that Windows 11 has been taking the best parts of Apple that Apple themselves hasn't done anything with. Like we talked about this, like the menu systems have gotten rounder, like things have gotten nicer. Like you remember, I forget what Apple called it, Time Machine or whatever. Like they would create these periodic backups, and Apple could do that because they made the computer and they controlled everything. And I think over time, forgive me for saying this, but Windows has become sort of boring in a good way. It's like we put a lot of features, but we whittled out the crap.
It's a tool now, yes.
Yeah, and by the way, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I think operating systems should be boring, so they should be boring.
Right. So,
and I think, well, I think what Copilot's basically the evolution of the failed Cortana project. Cortana came out at a time when everybody was doing those assistants,
digital assistants.
Microsoft needed one. Yeah, and it also comes out of like Connect. Like you remember Connect, where Connect was supposed to be this hands-free thing, but in reality, Connect only really had success as a voice assistant. You could talk to it. And so I think that's what you're seeing is you're not seeing anything necessarily new. You're just seeing a better integration of those things.
Well, that's where I was really thinking about AI, and obviously digital assistants, laid some kind of groundwork for, for the audio part of AI and being able to generate voices and things like that. All of you fed the data, so thank you to everyone. When it comes to let's say Amazon's digital assistant or Apple's or Microsoft's, I feel like they're sleeping. As soon as they can figure out a way to integrate AI to a better point, and I think Amazon announced that they're going to do this in the not too distant future, we're going to see a lot better digital assistants, which is great because they were almost they're very finite in their abilities, so that could be cool.
They were linear.
Yeah.
Like I have an iPhone, so of course I use, I don't want to say the word, it'll activate it, but I'll use that. And it's pretty good for like doing text messages or adding a reminder. It's very good for that sort of thing. And I think basically with the Amazon stuff, like the Echo and the Alexa and the Cortana and the Google thing, it was basically they just wanted to have it, but they had no idea what to do with it. I think you and I talked about this. Like Echo itself has been a gigantic cluster muck for Amazon, like financially, hasn't made any money. And so the problem is, I think what you're looking at is you're looking at an indexing of data, photos, songs, user preferences, and everything. And you're looking at the assistant to sort of amalgamate that and use it non-linearly. Like instead of play me this track, it's like play me something soothing or something. It's right. Or take or mail this photo to grandma and add message. Like it's interesting, but I don't think that's the power of AI. I think something else is going on, and I don't really know what it is. But I know something else is going on, and I always have a little caution when every single company does exactly the same things very quickly. Like that feels like lemmings to me.
It's definitely a trend, I believe is what they call. Trend. So, but either okay, yeah, hopefully everything's we're good. Okay, so I was looking at Mac OS Sonoma, and this is their website. If you're watching the video portion, you can see it here. Scroll back up to the top. I'll be honest, I kind of deferred to Craig on this one. He just upgraded to the new iPhone. He upgraded his Mac. He's he's all in on all the new stuff. He seems to like it, but then again, there has not been an Apple update revamp product that Craig has not thought it was the best thing in the world. So there we are.
It's basically, I mean, I'm not a Mac person either myself. I did spend little time with the last one, Ventura, when I was doing some testing on a M2 MacBook Air. But I'll say this: this is a very interesting update in regards to how it compares to Microsoft's. We were talking about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you hear me mute, it's because I don't want to see.
No, you're good.
Sorry, but What's interesting though is I look at this, and it's basically just the continuation. It's nowhere near as a big update as the Windows one, but it's making your Mac computer much more like iOS. It's becoming more and more like iOS, which may be the ultimate goal. I think that is pretty much what it is. But what's funny though?
Yeah.
I look at one of the new features of the Mac OS, and they have widgets.
Yeah.
We've had widgets forever on computers. But the way Windows does it is so horrendous. I can't stand it. Like, I love the weather app. I love weather apps. But on Windows, to enable it, you have to put it in your taskbar for mouse over. And you cannot disentangle weather from news. So to look at the weather, you need to look at the news app. And I don't like that at all.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
The MSN, the Microsoft News is pretty terrible. So I see where you come from.
But Microsoft does this a lot. Like Microsoft, and I'll give Apple credit. Microsoft will say, okay, you're going to put mail and calendar in the same thing. You're just going to put like peanut butter and jelly these things together. But Apple, to their credit, they do keep them separate. And I think maybe people love that sort of linearity of it. The flexibility, that a la carte, that you can kind of do what you want to do. I've always told you that I don't think Macs are as easy to use as Windows. I think Macs have seeded that. I think Windows is easier to use than Mac. Yeah. That being said, though, I think Mac's okay with that. I think if you have a Mac, the things that it does well, for example, if you bought a MacBook right now, if I said, Ben, I'm going to ship a MacBook to you right now, you took it out of the box, you could be online and doing probably most of this show within like half hour without needing to install almost anything.
Right.
Like your basic stock apps are all really good, and they're all there without any of the bloatware. And that's pretty impressive if you think about it. You don't have to worry about toggling things, because Apple's very aggressively anti-toggle. They don't want you to share stuff. They will tell you not to share stuff.
Yep.
Whereas Microsoft is like, I drink your milkshake, sip, sip, sip. And they want to take it all,
Yep.
It's crazy.
They really just looking through some of the updates. I mean, you're right. 60% of this is bringing the iOS to OS, to the new Sonoma OS, which, if you're going to have a digital life, then you want that kind of continuity. You're going to want to have your conversations, seamlessly flow to whatever Apple device that you're using. The rest of the stuff, though, I mean, privacy, security, I think Apple has really positioned themselves very, very well. I mean, not that anyone thinks that Microsoft is a non-secure operating system, but Apple is definitely leaning into the fact that they're not as hacked as often as Microsoft devices. So they're doing increased passwords. They're doing, more Find My Device stuff. They're really making sure that if you buy an Apple device, it's going to be a secure device, like out of the box. And that's also really good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and, to be fair, whenever people bring up the whole hacking thing, it's simply because, Windows is more popular. Like if Mac was more popular, you'd see more hacking. It's just the way it goes. Like if Russia's going to bomb a country, they're not going to bomb Guam. They're going to make it count. Right. But I'll say this. I hate to bring this up because I hate talking about gaming on this all the time, but a huge upgrade for Mac and iOS has been the gaming sector.
Yeah.
Like you're starting to see Apple move to this again. And I'm like, and I can't help but feel bad. It's like, oh, here we go again. Apple has all the pieces. They're just not going to make them work together. Like if Apple ever got off their tuchus and they actually just thought about what they were doing, like Apple, hire me. I will fix your problems for you. An idiot could do it. No, seriously, I could fix their problem.
Just get Steam to work on Apple and you're done. That's it.
Well, it did. You could blame Valve for that. Valve gave
Gavin is very against Apple. Yeah.
And he made all these promises about this and it just didn't work. But Apple's made huge, gigantic gains. They've actually made more gains than Microsoft and Sony combined. And they've done nothing with it. Like, look at that picture there. There's a Sony PlayStation controller, right?
Yeah.
Next to a Mac. Like and before that was an Xbox controller. Like they know what they're doing. They just don't have it. They don't have that centralized thing. And that's the problem. That's their biggest issue. And to be honest with you, Ben, there's another Apple gaming thing that we could talk about too. I'm sure we're going to get into, which I actually think is even more significant than this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, the iPhone 15.
Yeah. The iPhone 15, totally Craig pulled it out of the box and, he had it in his hand and he showed me and I said, wow, that looks a lot like the iPhone 14. But I don't know. What has been the overall reception? Because it's, again, just seems like another incremental iPhone.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. It is. Did he get the 15 or the 15 Pro?
15 Pro, of course. You had to ask. Yes. And
this is the weird thing though. For the first time ever, the iPhone 15 Pro is going to play AAA blockbuster games natively as good as the PlayStation 5.
That's
Think about
crazy.
that for a second. That's crazy. Like it's going to get Resident Evil 4, the one we were talking about before. It's getting that. It's getting these big budget, and they're going to cost the same price. They're going to these are parity with leading cut. Like think about how fat and juicy the PlayStation 5 is. The thing looks like a turbine, and your iPhone 15 is going to play those games.
It's definitely voluptuous. Yes, it's
apparently there's some issues. I guess there's some thermal issues with it. Like maybe there's some design issues that cause it to overheat. But no, check out the trailer. Like, can you play the trailer for the mobile thing for iPhone 15, bro?
For, the iPhone 15 mobile gaming?
Yeah, there's a trailer for the Resident Evil stuff on there. Resident Evil 4, to be clear, Resident Evil 4 Remake came out this year on next-gen consoles and PC. You're going to play that on your phone. Think about that.
I think this is it, and then... Okay, yeah, everyone should be hearing that.
The A17 Pro allows us to push the quality.
Well, they're really bad at these presentations now, aren't they?
More dynamic lighting.
Putting them
Once
in
only
here we go.
available on consoles can now be played on iPhone thanks to A17 Pro.
Yeah.
I mean, Resident Evil was a pretty big one, and it looked good on PlayStation 5. So to have that on an iPhone, very impressive.
Well, the thing about it, though, it doesn't really have anything to do with the game itself. It has to do with the fact that we've reached sort of peak silicon. Like there was a rumor coming out. I don't know if you've been reading the leaks about the new Nintendo console. That, for example, I guess Nintendo's been showing it to third parties. Like the performance level on it, is said to be similar to the PlayStation 5. And how do you do that on something that's going to be much less expensive, much more inferior? Because it's using AI, it's using DLSS or AMD's version.
The auto upscaling stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's an application of AI. That's an application of actual intelligent like computing. That to me is where it's signaling where we're going. It's sort of like what computers are, Ben. Like if you go back and look at where we get the word computer, it comes from basically a woman sitting in a room with a notebook doing computer calculations.
Yep.
And basically a machine can do that more efficiently. And that's basically what AI is doing. I know it's kind of weird that we're talking about in basic terms, but they're using AI to basically intelligently compute and, more efficiently. And I think you look at the iPhone, you look at the new, whatever the Nintendo thing is, that's a little more interesting to me than send grandma a video. That's where we're going. Like, and of course, that's probably where we get Terminator out of it, so
you turning really getting the most out of technology that you can, and really and like we've talked about Moore's law being dead, and time and time again it's been either surpassed or it's fallen behind. Generally stays about on track, but that's where you're going to get that kind of continuation, because you really can't get too much smaller on the silicon, but you can get more out of it. The improvements can come from kind of the software side and the resources that you're kind of getting out of it, because Nathan, we're talking about like what soon we're going to be talking about like the angstrom level processors. Like it's not even about the nanometer or whatever, it's like the angstrom level. Yeah, the improvements they're going to be there, and AI seems like it's going to be the thing that's going to bridge that gap.
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine being the person who has to sell McDonald's hamburgers? Like you don't have to reinvent the hamburger every year. You have to reinvent the marketing every year.
Yeah.
And so like at some point, mail and calendar and text message and web browsing and emoji does not need a supercomputer, right? These basic functions do not need it. Like you're not going to have bleeding edge games every year because they cost $1 billion. Like, did you hear the rumor about Grand Theft Auto? Like 6 costing $2 billion to make. That's insane. I believe it. I believe it.
I feel like someone lost a bet and they said, okay, all the revenue from GTA 5 after this point is going to go into 6. And they just never stopped making money with 5. So it's they've just poured it into 6. Yeah.
That's the problem. Like if 6 is a new thing, they have to start all over. Right. And that you tell them, let's just cut off our money machine and keep that going. I don't know if it's going to happen. But What I'm saying is at some point, technology is going to be too good. It's going to be worthless. And you're going to have all this e-waste that runs perfectly fine. Like it's going to be hard to make the argument that you need to buy a $600, the PlayStation 5 is $500. The iPhone is like $1,500, so they're nowhere near the same cost. But are you really going to want to put your phone and on your TV while you play the game? No, you're going to want a console for that because you're going to want access to your phone. So what's going to happen? I don't know. But when you see technology shrunken like this and maximized, it's going to change the way we interact with things, and hopefully for the better.
Yeah,
it won't be cheaper; it'll be more expensive.
Yep. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump topics just a little bit here because my goodness, we're already at an hour. So let's breeze through these last couple of topics. The first one being a birthday, which I have a new soundboard, so I don't have the happy birthday song. But Google, if you go to their
play that because you have to pay royalties.
No. That fell out of
Did it?
That fell out of royalty like 2 or 3 years ago. So now anyone can use the happy birthday thing. But now if you open up Google, you will see G25 GLE, which of course means it is Google's 25th birthday. 25 years ago today, the Google search engine blessed us and changed our lives forever. And of course,
I remember this.
Yeah, and of course it made Yahoo look so stupid when they had the chance to buy it out for like $1 million. So.
Well, that's the least of their problems.
Yes.
I was actually living in California at the time, working in the industry, a big magazine. And I remember when I left, I took a bus ride through the Midwest. I went to go visit some friends in Kansas, and I didn't realize that I was actually part of the whole Google thing when this was happening, because a lot of Google, like I think the guys who made Google Earth were from University of Kansas, where I had some friends. And some friends of friends were computer engineers. And I remember them sitting he had his little laptop, and he's like, "Oh, you need to see this." I was like, "What is it?" It's called Google. It's a website that searches. I was like, "Oh, like Yahoo?" Like, no. I was like, "No, Yahoo's terrible. Like Google's the future." I was like, but they both search. So why do you need it? I have never been more wrong about anything in my life than that. But I remember the impact. He's like, and I remember my friend thinking, Google's going to change the world. Google's going to change the world, because I guess Google was at the university, so maybe he knew something I didn't. But I remember that, yeah. And they did change the world, mostly for the better, not always. So
yeah, their search engine has definitely set the bar for pretty much every other. Like, there's a reason Google became the verb to look something up. And everything has to really compete. And of course, you can look at all the antitrust and all the monopoly accusations
going on right
and stuff
now,
like that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Really, I mean, Google is it's almost like Wikipedia. It's almost as much a public service as it is a for-profit venture. It's really gotten that ubiquitous in our everyday lives. So very impressive that they are now 25 years. I mean, again, wasn't that long ago, but yeah, I think they're sticking around. They're going to keep sticking around. And the only thing I will say, I'm glad that they have not included ads on Google.com yet.
Except for themselves.
Yes, except for themselves. I know it's going to happen eventually, but for now, I'm happy that after 25 years, they still haven't included an ad on that page. So there you go.
I will. I have one comment about this. I use Google all the time. I use Google Docs.
Of course.
I use Google this, Google that. I mean, I'm a Google person for the most part. Don't have Android. I prefer iOS. But I will say this. Everybody talks about Chrome browser, then they have Edge and all this. If you have Firefox, or if you're using a browser that for whatever reason still has the search engine, like, people forget that's what helped Google become dominant when it was Mozilla. You remember that?
Yep.
And Mozilla would basically insist on Google as their partner for this. And they had a symbiotic relationship for a very long time. And they helped each other grow until Google, went off on their own thing. If you still have your own search bar, I just want to PSA this to your listeners. Chrome doesn't have it. Edge doesn't have it. A lot of them don't have it. Firefox blessedly has it. If Firefox ever gets rid of the search box, I'm done with the internet. But you can actually program it, like, really simply to search a bunch of different search engines. And it's remarkable, Ben, if you do the same query under like Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo or whatever, you get different answers. And it's really interesting. And I think just don't always assume that Google's the only thing. Like, diversify your thought a little bit. Like, you can find different answers. It's really cool. Yeah.
No. There's a lot to be said for, we spent the first half of the show talking about AI and algorithm and so on and so forth. Google has their still search engine. They're still just delivering you, recipes for a soup or whatever the heck you're doing. But behind the scenes, it's a super algorithm, and their algorithm is going to be different than, you assume it'd be different for DuckDuckGo, but I think DuckDuckGo was found to just be recycling Google searches. But yeah, be it Bing, be it DuckDuckGo, whatever, they have their own algorithm, and algorithms are going to change depending on a lot of different factors. So you're right. Don't just think Google is the end-all, be-all. They are currently, but yeah, that's just because of cultural shifts. So yeah, there you go.
That is true. Nobody's forever.
Yeah. So with that being said, nothing lives forever, and let's talk about Google Podcasts real quick. I think that most people who create podcasts, I think just put their podcast up there because, hey, it was another place to have your RSS, kind of point to. But, when it came to listening to podcasts, looks like it didn't really matter that they came out with their own, kind of podcast section. Or rather, I should say, and I think this is where you would come in, they segmented podcasts for no reason. Spotify has proven if you include it in your main service, people will listen to podcasts. So why segregate it when you don't have to?
It's so crazy that it's another one of those things where you can sort of see the mismanagement where Google had all these disparate services and none of them talk to each other. Like putting stuff on Google Podcasts was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
When Google Music first came out, Google Music was not a music service. It was like a music smorgasbord, which I actually enjoyed because it didn't cost anything. But at the end, when they started to monetize it, when they started to splinter off podcasts, it became really clear that it's sort of like if you run a website like ours, you had to be on Google Podcasts, but you didn't really know why. It was sort of like you had to put, what was it, Google Plus? Like you had to have a Google Plus thing, but you're not sure why because there was no engagement. And, blissfully, Microsoft.
Because if you weren't on it, if someone happened to be using it that year, people would be like, why aren't you on it? And, just having another icon, having another button was, is important. Just being,
It feels like what's going on with Instagram and Facebook right now with Threads. Like, threads, but
talk about dystopian. Threads. Really, you're bringing that up?
I'll say this about Threads. I don't know if you want to talk about what the book we mentioned before, but if we do, Threads would be a very interesting segue into that. So I'll leave that up to you.
We will be talking about that book next. So,
okay.
But let's wrap up podcast and let's just jump right into the book.
Sure.
So Google Podcasts, they're ending in 2024, and it's going to be rolled into YouTube Music. Which Nathan, I'll be honest with you, why isn't Google just wrapping up everything into YouTube? Like YouTube is like the predominant social media platform for so many billions of people. Why not just roll it all together?
Two reasons. I think they're also getting rid of movies as well. I heard they're getting rid of that too. It's because they're not Google. It's Alphabet. Alphabet has a bunch of different they're a big umbrella company.
Yeah.
And I imagine that to move content from within one to the other would be a logistical nightmare at this point. It would be like integrating like 40 kilos of storage into your apartment.
Too big to fail. Hello, too big to change.
Pretty much.
I don't know.
They call it dinosaurs and mammals, and right now Google is ironically the dinosaur. And they don't really kill it. They just sort of let it die off, and then because I think Google Music is that destination, but I think Google Music is basically just the template, whatever Spotify and Amazon are.
Right.
Like content site. Get a contract, like nothing special. Like you're not going to see Spotify and Amazon lead the charge on anything that Apple doesn't do. It's all three of them are going to do the exact same thing because there is no innovation happening right now in this sector at all. It's just consolidation. Nobody has time for innovation. You're just lucky people turn it on.
There's a phrase that I think is very applicable now, and I apologize for, and we've already said a curse word or two, so I'm not really that concerned. It's called the enshittening. Of things, and it's where you build, and this is also going to lead into Elon Musk. Elon Musk, I think, started the domino effect, where he came in, he bought Twitter for way too much money, and to his credit, he was like, "I'm going to make this thing make money one way or another." It's going to start making money. And, he did something that no other company can do in the tech space because he had no more venture capital holding him back. Of course, I'm sure he had loans that he had to repay, but whatever. He has Tesla backing him up and he can, take out all the collateral he needs. Nathan, he said, Twitter needs to make money, so I'm going to slash the people working on it. I'm going to start charging for subscriptions. I'm going to start doing this, that, or the other. And he started a domino effect across the industry, really the tech industry, saying the time of growth is over. Who cares if you have, 2 billion users? If you're not making a profit every month, who cares? And that's when shittening kind of comes along, where they start cutting, slashing, and monetizing everything. Like if you've enjoyed listening to things for, $5, $4 a month on Spotify, that's kind of, that's going to go away. If you enjoyed Disney Plus for $4 a month, well, welcome to Disney Plus for $13 a month. Things are going to get a little bit worse and a lot more expensive to turn a profit. And that's where we're kind of at.
I don't think Musk was the first. I think Musk was the first to openly say it. I'll say this: the tech industry is so far up its own rectum that they present themselves as some sort of digital saviors, and they've taken for granted that people will use their products no matter how crappy they are, no matter how feature rich or feature less they are. For example, Facebook is a good example of this. Facebook is you remember Mark Zuckerberg's famous adage, they're dumb fucks.
Yes.
And the idea was you just give people stuff because you are the product. That was the adage. They're just going to keep doing it forever. They're going to join Facebook. They're going to join, and Facebook has it. Well, then Google needs one, and then Apple needs one. Oh, they have this music service. Then everyone needs one. You name the tech company, they all have the same services. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, whatever. All these social companies have about as much innovation as my little finger. They just copy each other. They copy because it's all about getting
very
data.
Incestuous. Even when you look at the hiring policies,
yes. Back and forth.
The stuff that they are trying to do is so new and innovative. Like to hire an expert in the field, Google hires from Apple because they have 2 years experience because they're an expert.
Well, and we're going to talk about Musk for a second, because obviously the Walter Isaacson book is out. But going back to Twitter, though, I think what Musk has always done, Musk has something that a lot of these companies don't have. Musk has a empathy deficit view of the world and a lot of money. And I think, and I've said this before, I'm not the biggest fan of Elon Musk, but I will say this before. I've grown to respect part of his process about how this works, is that Musk is open about his prejudices. I don't mean just political. And if you think Musk is some sort of Republican conservative, you have no idea what you're talking about. But I'll say this. He goes and he buys Twitter, a Twitter company that has been out longer than most of these social media companies that hasn't drawn a penny, makes no money. It's sitting there, right? It's just sitting there. It's being mismanaged by a guy named Dorsey, who himself was jettisoned from the company because he wanted to be a fashion model. I'm not joking, by the way. Left the company to do NFTs. Decided, like a lot of these companies, like a lot of these guys do, I'm going to just rebuild Twitter from the ground up. I forget what he called it. He made his own Twitter clone. I don't think he did anything. Blue or something. But anyway, so Musk comes in, and Musk was championed as the second coming of Steve Jobs. And by the way, as this book positions, this Walter Isaacson was the guy who wrote the Jobs biography back in 2011. And this is, for all intents and purposes, a sequel. Like Isaacson would say that as well. Like, we want a tech titan in our lives. We need an Edison. We need a Ford. We need a Disney. We need someone who's going to lead the industry, and they're going to be called an asshole. They're going to be called a visionary. We're going to respect them and love them because they make the magic happen. Musk is the one making electric cars. He's putting satellites in space. He's doing Earthlink. He's putting people on Mars. He's doing stuff that nobody's doing. It was Jobs who did the computer and the iPhone and all that stuff. We want these people. We love them as celebrities. But the point is, but when they start becoming political, we don't like them anymore. So you have Bill Gates, you have Zuckerberg, you have Bezos, you have all these people who are as political AF, but they do it by donating. Musk comes out and he says, I'm just going to take a stance. He buys Twitter, and everybody who loved him doesn't love him anymore. Now they hate him. And if you go online right now, go on any tech, I told you, I've said this before, go on any tech website, there's an obsession with Musk that is unhealthy for the industry. How many times did they tell you in the last year, Twitter's dead, Twitter's going to die, he's messing up, he's doing this? It's still here. It's still doing good.
Twitter will literally not die because the guy that has the ability to pull the plug, he has no need to.
But let me tell you why, though. Because Musk recognized something in Twitter that Facebook doesn't have, that, goodness gracious, Instagram doesn't have. He recognized the audience is very, very faithful to the platform. Like, you cannot go on Instagram and have intellectual conversations that don't involve butt cracks or makeup or collagen or anything. It's very much what it is. Facebook is all about selling things on your marketplace. Twitter is where the world leaders come. It's where the intellectuals go. And I told you this before. I'm sort of watching YouTube implode from themselves, like they're self-detonating themselves. If Twitter matches that, if Twitter's able to monetize this, like what do you call it, a super app, if they're able to do this, that's fine. The jury's still out if that's going to happen, but it doesn't seem like Twitter's been affected by Musk's meddling. It just doesn't seem like it. Like people talk about advertising revenue, but when you talk about advertising revenue, I mean, the company made no profits before. You could have all the advertising in the world, but if you're
at the very worst, he's going to match what Twitter was doing before he bought it, which is made no money. And
I want to be clear about something. You're okay. Going back to the Walter Isaacson book, it's a fascinating book. If you like the Steve Jobs book, you'll like this. If you like Walter Isaacson, you'll like this. But the problem is Jobs died when the book came out. Elon Musk is very much alive. Most of the people that Isaacson writes about are either dead or like Benjamin Franklin or Einstein. But Musk is still doing his thing. So we don't know. The jury's still out. But I will say this: your like or dislike of Musk is probably aligned with your politics. As with most people today, we're so politically bifurcated. But at the end of the day, Musk is a very interesting person who I've grown to have a little respect for, not because of who he is as a person, but because he does seem to put his money where his mouth is. And I like people who take chances, that put their own risk up. And I don't feel like he's telling me what to think, unlike a Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or whatever, But at the same point in time, though, I'm not going to sit here and say he sounds like a fun guy to go a party with. Although I will say one thing, the one revelation I'll spoil for you, that it seems that Musk is so obsessed with video games. Like, I mean, you kind of knew this anyway. Like for example, and he's so obsessed with pop culture. Like, it's kind of funny to see how influenced he is by certain absurdities like Monty Python or Mel Brooks, or wanting to be.
He is a meme lord. Yes, he loves pop culture.
Like these guys sent his car into space with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But what I mean is like there's an anecdote in the story where he asked CD Projekt Red to put him in the Cyberpunk game. Because his
and he came in with like a 200-year-old pistol or something like that. Yeah,
he's like, I'm armed but not dangerous. But there's so many instances of him like reverse engineering video games, like getting mad at playing Quake, loving Elden Ring, all this stuff, and how it influences his thought. And I realized something is that Musk treats life like a video game. Like he's not risk adverse at all.
He does have that luxury being in the position that he's in. So
it is, and that's what I'm saying though. But again, final thoughts about this. As a society, we tend to look up at our titans. We don't have gods, small g. We don't have Zeus, we don't have Medusa. Well, she's not a god, she's a Gorgon. But we do have some. I would say in politics we have some Medusas. But what I'm saying though is that you look at someone, you're like, well, where's the future? And it's funny. There's so much of the book that's about stock markets and short sellers and all this. And we talked about this. You and I have talked about this. I don't know what people expect. Like, do they think innovation is on the timetable? Like, well, we got to get flying cars by 2030. I don't think people really understand what innovation is, and it takes work, and it doesn't just happen because you put money in something.
Right.
Like, I don't know, there's an anecdote in the book where Musk is talking about steel, and he's talking to steel manufacturers, and he says, oh, what's the cooling period of steel? So it takes this long. He's like, oh, make it less than a minute. And then he starts comparing steel to cookies. He's like, well, can it be hard on the outside and gooey on the inside? And I thought to myself, this is someone who's either going to get us to Mars or blow us the hell up. It's one or the other. We're either going to blow up and be extinct, or we're getting to Mars. But that's what happens, though. That's what happens when you have people who.
That's what an innovator really is at the end of the day. Is someone who takes a process that we've refined, we've perfected, we've done everything, and they just say, well, what if we did it a little bit differently? And that little bit differently, a lot of times, hey, it's a dead end, doesn't do anything, and you don't hear about them. But then the other people, they're like, well, if we did it a little bit differently, then this could happen. That's where small incremental innovations are much more common than entire earth-shattering, revelations, for sure.
It is an interesting dichotomy, and I would say if you're at all curious about manufacturing, if you're at all curious about how someone would like maybe an Aspergic personality like Musk works. It's a very basic concept, Ben, is that if you're trying to build something that's never been built before, you cannot rely on people who have only built what has come before. Like someone needs to literally break the mold. And you're going to get you're going to get resistance, because if it's you literally can't say build me a space rocket that goes to Mars and back, because it's never been done before.
Right.
So you can't just hire someone on Craigslist or LinkedIn. Microsoft Copilot.
You probably could if you go to Facebook Marketplace or you go to Nextdoor.
Yeah.
Has he tried Nextdoor? See if there's maybe an engineer.
That's what I mean, though.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to come from, though. It's going to come from a place that's not the obvious, because if you only hire people who have done it, you're never going to get something done that hasn't been done. It seems axiomatic to say it, but it's true.
So this is going to be my way to transition to our final topic of the show, and this is going to be a little bit closer to home. Speaking about never being done before, let's talk about a certain historian, Chris Kohler. What happened?
Oh.
What happened here with Popzara and their latest podcast episode?
Are you familiar with this guy, by the way? Just a little thing.
Karateka. No, I am not familiar, unfortunately.
Well, Chris Kohler, he's been around the industry for quite a while, longer than me, actually, even though he's younger. He's a video game historian. He helped set up Wired, Wired.com with all their stuff. He's been on documentaries. He's written books about it. He does podcasts. He's all over the place. You're talking about a podcast we did. Chris was very, very generous to come on the Popzara podcast. He heads up a company called Digital Eclipse. He does their editorial director. He's been spearheading this thing called the Gold Master series. Their first game came out a month ago. It's called The Making of Karateka. By the way, it could be Karateka, could be Karateka. I won't answer it because it's in the game. I talked to you about this a while ago. One of my favorite projects that came out last year was from this company.
The Atari 50th year anniversary or whatever?
Which I absolutely love. I think anyone should play it. It's basically an interactive museum. It's fantastic. I wanted to say this was a sequel, but well, as you learn in the podcast, it's not really the sequel. But they're going to start focusing on individual aspects instead of a broad-ranging thing. I don't know if you've ever played Karateka, if you have any experience with it. You probably haven't. Most people under 30 haven't. But if you were in the 80s, you loved it. Like it was very influential. It was the first game to be rotoscoped. The creator, was it Jordan Mechner, would go off to create Prince of Persia using the same techniques. It was the first video game to have cinematic elements. And whether the game itself is kind of irrelevant. What's really interesting is the story. Like we're focusing on someone who saw potential using, technology would be considered primitive by today's standards, and he was able to introduce concepts to it. And what's really interesting for game developers is that he'd like to take notes. So you get to see everything. You get to see the back and forth when he was only 17. He was a genius, and he went back and forth, and you get to see it from the side. And yeah, the average kid today with an iPhone can make something that looks a million times better. But you talk about innovation, but this is exactly the same thing. Is that you have someone who saw potential that wasn't there and made the mechanisms, made the devices to get us there, and arguably make games better. Not everyone thinks that games need to be cinematic, but they are. And this is a very, very, very important aspect of it. I would say one of the genesis focal points of it. The game's available now. It's like, I forget how it's not expensive. It's like $20. Play it. Like it takes you 2 hours to see everything. It's really cool.
I'm glad that I talk about this all the time. Having interviewed the creator of the computer mouse, having interviewed the creator of the cell phone, having interviewed the creator of so many of the basic technologies that build up what we're doing. Like this stuff is not ancient. Like it's not ancient history. It's just some guy that you can call up on a phone and be like, hey, you want to talk? And they're more than happy to. Like, I'm glad that like this history is not that far. So, people remember and people are wanting to preserve it, but also it's like, it is a long time ago because as I'm sure, as you know, preserving old video games, you don't have those consoles, you don't have the hardware that they ran on. You have to essentially reconstruct, and at that point, is it even the same game? Preserving the stuff is very hard. Yes.
Well, like when Chris talks about, like, people talk about ROMs as though ROMs are just always there, but no, like there are cases where ROMs and the technology, the the programming and the machines themselves were so,
specialized.
integrated. Yeah, specialized. And not only that, though, if you consider video games an art form, which I do, our good friend Corey Gallagher would not agree with me, but if you consider them an art form, then part of that appreciation is for the efforts that people made, not just to innovate them, but to add to that art form. To say it might be a pixel, it might be this or that. But I will say this, spoiler, the best part of playing the making of Karateka is discovering Jordan Mechner's dad. His dad is Francis Mechner. He escaped the Nazis. He was a Jewish refugee who escaped the Nazis and went off to create computer assembly language and programs, was a master computer piano composer, and just supported the hell out of his son. Not only did he support it, he made the music for the game, and even was videotaped to become the model for the rotoscoping. That's interesting to me. That's a story, and at the end of the day, behind all art is a person. That's literally what it is. And I guess that's a good way to close it off. When you talk about AI, you say, will AI replace creators? Absolutely not. It will whittle down the shitty creators. It will allow the creative creators to blossom.
Right. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, that is a great way to kind of end the show. And of course, if you want to hear that full interview and hear from the man himself, and of course, you always have a lot of great podcasts that people can find at popzara.com. We'll have a link to that over on our website. We'll have everything there. Super simple for you if you want to find out more. Until then, though, Nathan, thank you so much for, time shifting and, kind of working with us. I'm heading out of town, so no new shows until the end of next week, ladies and gentlemen. But until then, have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you here next time. And Nathan, everyone, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.